These are fun, off-the-cuff discussions on movies and streaming series, both new and old.
Together, we'll attempt to bridge the gap between Hollywood industry insider and the casual viewer.
This is Alec.
And I'm Ben.
And you're listening to the Cinema A to B podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cinema A to B. This is our final episode in our little mini season of Schwarzenegger, and this is the one that we've kind of decided to do something a little bit different with. We don't typically do this, and we're going to see how this goes. We're going to combine in a discussion on 1984, The Terminator, along with its incredible sequel from 1991, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And we're going to see how this conversation goes and where it diverts into both movies. And we're going to do, I think, a little bit of compare and contrast and just have fun talking shop on some of Arnold's best work.
Yeah.
So kick us off, man.
Oh, I love these movies. Absolutely. So I have a love affair with T2. Absolutely. I think hands down, I think like one of my favorite Arnold films. I think if I put it as my top, it was one of the first ones first R-rated Arnold films I was able to see as a kid, like, because it was a little less horror, less violent-y. I mean, there was obviously violence, but it was a little bit less of that. I was allowed to see it at my cousin's house, and I just walked away being blown away, let alone the scene in T2 when they're at Cyberdyne Systems and he gets out the minigun and just goes through and mows down the cop cars is just phenomenal. Like, I'm just so absolutely impressed with these films. And so I actually watched T2 before I watched the Terminator. And it took me a while, and I finally went to go see it. And I liked it, but odd for me, I was 100%. I'm a T2 is my favorite over Terminator. Having said that, having just watched them, I am very impressed with the Terminator again. Like, really sitting down and like watching it and looking at it of just how being James Cameron's true first debut film, because like his Pirates 2 or Piranha 2 or whatever the movie that he was, where he got basically he's the director, but he got kicked out. So this being his, like the Terminator being his true first film, his debut film, for being this good, for having a budget of $6.5 million is ridiculous. Like it should not be this good. And I walked away a lot in the first film, and like I want to put like the two films in very two different genres. Like they're in the same universe, but they're very different genre movies. Like watching the Terminator now, and I'm very much kind of feeling like, and this is everybody, so I'm not coming up with anything new, but like this is much more in like the horror thriller film. Like it feels kind of like a Halloween, like the Terminator is obviously Jason. And I know this came after Halloween, so that's probably what they're going for. So I'm just picking up what they were trying to put down. There's so much in the Terminator that feels so intimate in a lot of ways. And a lot of that was just constraint of budget. They couldn't do things. Like I wrote down, I was talking about the gun battle between the cars in the parking lot. Like, first off, nowadays movie that'd be so much larger, probably jumping cars between parking lot buildings or whatever. They'd all have automatic weapons. It's literally two guys with two shotguns, in a very tight space. It just feels so much more dangerous like there. And like, I love the intimacy of this movie, of how contained it feels, but yet how still dangerous it is. And it just feels like much more of a horror slasher film, which I think T2 gets so much more away with being closer to like a sci-fi action film and gets away from that horror aspect of it. You still obviously have a good villain and all that stuff, but it's not the same vein that I would say.
No, and I just watched The Terminator again, probably more recently than T2 is probably a couple months back, but I wanted a fresher viewing on The Terminator because it had been quite a while. And I think I saw a cable edited version of The Terminator before I saw T2 Judgment Day. But they edit down quite a bit for TV, and it not even just from a language standpoint, but just the violence and the brutality. The Terminator is just an utterly brutal film in how, no matter how you slice it. You're right. It's totally horror. It's coming out of Halloween with the first person perspective, especially once Cameron kind of opts to reveal that that this really is a machine, and you get I'd forgotten that it's like halfway through the movie that you get the really cool red visual readout of the way the Terminator's computer vision system looks. And it's after he's been shot just a million times in the club.
Yeah.
Was it Tech Noir?
Tech Noir. Yep. That's
when he gives you the reveal, like, hey, yeah, this thing's not some bad dude. And it's a much more terrifying film for me than Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Like, Judgment Day is enthralling and fun and like a no holds barred like piece of action, just an absolute romp, but it doesn't really ever feel that scary. I mean, I guess the T-1000 feels pretty close to unbeatable, so there is that component, but the first movie is just, it's and the first film's like almost entirely shot at night, and the second film really isn't. They get away from that until the final act. It feels much more like a revisitation of the Terminator. I'd forgotten in the first movie how many car chases there are in this movie. Like, if there's a gun battle other than that incredible sequence when Arnold just shoots up the police station, the rest of it, if they're firing at each other, it's usually, like you said, it's usually from a car. It's either in the parking garage or it's just out on the streets of a very grungy, dirty 1984 Los Angeles. And it's really interesting to see that change from 84, the way he even depicts LA from 84 to 91.
Yeah.
91 feels a lot cleaner and like it's bright and the sun is shining. Like it feels like a much more progressive Los Angeles. Whereas the 84 one, it feels like our lead character, Kyle Reese played great, by the way, by Michael Biehn. Like, totally underrated performance. It feels like he's just as easily could get killed by just some rando on the streets in this movie. Whereas the sequel doesn't. Like, the kids are running around LA and it's like, it doesn't feel particularly dangerous. So that, just from that standpoint, there's a huge contrast, but I love the genre switch. Obviously Cameron had done it already with Aliens, with taking a great horror original and then going just pure action. Yeah. And pulls it off once again. So,
and to his own film too this time. So there's definitely a lot. I feel like I have a lot more to say about Terminator 1 just because it's not that it's more fresh, but it's kind of, I still, even to this day, I've watched it a whole lot less than the original Terminator 2, but there's so much about T2 that I love. I love the character transition of Sarah Connor, of where she goes in, like they built up like why she is now this, awesome super girl kind of a thing of just going and doing this stuff, but still giving her some emotional beats, giving her some, morality and kind of that wrestling with how far am I willing to go to save the future, a future that I've never seen. And the first movie, obviously she's very much the damsel in distress and kind of, has that moments and, Kyle's there to bring her through, though there is some slightly cheesy dialogue in the first one. I mean, they both have some cheesy dialogue.
Yeah,
but
there is.
I always wanted to laugh, like when I was watching it this time, when it was just like, I came across time for you, Sarah. Like, I'm like, you had a picture. Like, this is a relationship that's not going to, good thing you died, buddy, because this is not going to last. This is not going to be.
I've always loved you.
Yeah. Like, no. This is not, you don't know who she is.
Here, this brings up a good point because I think we've talked about this before, but it bears discussion again. I think a lot of people mistake bad acting when really it's a decent actor that's being required to deliver bad dialogue.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it's like, his acting's so terrible there. It's like, no, that line's just really bad.
Yeah, it's rough.
Like, they're just bad lines. Yeah, I totally agree.
And you know what? And I'm sure it works on paper. Like, there's many things like where you're just like, oh yeah, this really works on paper. But then when you actually say it out loud, it just doesn't fit. Like, it's like one of those things, just, it's never going to live up to how you've already put it into your mind. And I mean, but it does work. It shows kind of his devotion. It shows what he's built her up to be, of why he did this, and why he's willing to basically take a one-way trip, 40 something odd years, 45 years into the past to save his general's mother's life. And it's interesting. Like, though it's, I always find it funny because like they talk about it in the beginning, and I really picked it up this time, where he's just like, the Skynet's defense grid was smashed. They were, you know, like they're on the verge. The only way they were going to win was to go back and change and alternate history or whatever. So it's like, then I'm like, now I have questions about T2, because where did this come from? And so, and I was reading about it, and originally Cameron actually wanted to have in the first Terminator, he wanted to have 2 Terminators and like multiple people to come back from 2029, and one of them like die in the time travel transition, and then one Terminator to be destroyed by Reese. So they have to send back the T-1000, the liquid metal version of the Terminator, and he's got to fight that. But they're like, they can't really control him, like, or something, like he's going to maybe alternate history too much to then Skynet never gets formed or something along those lines. So it obviously all got scrapped, but then he brings it back. And I have to agree with you. The T-1000 is probably one of my favorite villains. Like, what I feel like the scariest villains, just because it's like, it's almost impossible to beat. But yet I feel like a very plausible way Cameron came up to beat him. Like, this makes sense of why they won. But oh my goodness,
the T-1000's best appearance, though, is not even in a Terminator movie, though. It's in Wayne's World.
Sure.
Have you seen this, boy? By the way, isn't he in Last Action Hero as well? He walks out of the police station.
Yes,
yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
he does. Yeah, he walks right by Arnold.
Yeah. So I think Robert Patrick is perfect also as T-1000. Like,
yeah, he is.
And I read that he trained super hard to be able to run that fast and still be able to breathe through his nose, because he wanted to be like, I'm a machine. I'm not going to be gasping for air. And so like he spent months devoting himself.
He's
to
super
learning
fit.
This.
He's super fit. Like, you can tell just the way he moves, and
he's almost got that Tom Cruise movie hero run. You know,
almost. He just
He's
needs 6-inch lifts in his shoes, and he would have it down pat. But no, I love. It's not been that long ago I've seen it, Terminator 2, but I love his little interaction with the step parents, the foster parents initially, and they're like, "Yeah, there was a big guy on the bike, you know." Oh,
is that gonna be a problem?
I wouldn't worry about him.
Yeah.
Thanks for your cooperation. I'm like, man, this programming is good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and honestly, at this point, you got to think to yourself, for those people who did see Terminator first and then watch this, like, you're still unsure which one's the bad guy. You know, I mean, unless I never saw actual like trailers for this, so I don't know. But like, going into this, like, is Arnold still the bad guy? Like, are you aware of that?
I think they tried. No, yeah, I think they tried to sell that. I think they kept that a secret. You'd have to go back to the trailers, but I thought that was the intent.
Yeah,
and
because
he even tries to do it a little bit in the Terminator as well, the first one, trying to get you confused about Kyle Reese's intentions. But I never bought that. Like, there's only one that's like killing people.
Yeah, exactly.
From the onset. So that didn't make sense. But I think T2's intention initially was for you to at least be suspicious of Arnold, even if you thought Robert Patrick was bad, that you would think maybe there's even 2 Terminators after him.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, because I just remember like watching it this time. It was very much like you see Robert Patrick kind of over the body of the police officer. And then, you know, he's got that scene where he's naked and he pulls out the gun. And so you're unsure if he's killed him or just knocked him out, kind of like what Reese did in the Terminator. And then the next thing you see him walking with the police, you know, officer's uniform, or what you think is the police officer uniform. You don't see him transition until obviously much later. And so it's just super, super interesting to see kind of the dynamic of how they build the reveal up.
By the way, I was kind of confused why the T-1000 didn't assume the appearance of the officer he just killed.
Yes. I think it would have been.
I was like, why wouldn't you just do that and then go around, like hide the body and then just go around as that guy?
Yeah.
But
it's not like he needed him,
No.
because none of the cops ever asked any questions about this random guy who just kept, jumping different cop cars and such.
It's interesting, the callbacks that I'd forgotten about, because I want to feel like in the edit on for cable that they chop a bunch of it, but there are so many scenes in the original that I forgot about where Arnold's original Terminator does the voice reproduction of other people.
Yep.
And I'd forgotten a lot about that wasn't original to T2. Like that's what the Terminator's capable of in the first one. And then obviously does it to great effect in that great line of like, how's Wolfie? And then he's just like, your foster parents are dead. And it's just like, what? This has escalated quickly.
I do love the memes that are out there that talk about the kid from Salute Your Shorts, who's Eddie Furlong's like friend or whatever, and he's just like, he saved humanity by lying to a cop just immediately. It's like, don't know him. Yeah.
Absolutely did. Yeah. Danny Cooksey as Tim. Yeah, that's super funny.
Yeah.
There's cool little tidbits though in this, real simple stuff like John Connor being really good at video games, especially if they're like war games. It's just like a nice touch of if he actually is going to be this great military leader. That makes total sense. Him just freaking rocking in the full size sit down of Afterburner. Those were so hard to find, by the way.
And they were expensive too.
Yeah, they were.
They were like $1 or something, quarters.
I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't particularly care for Edward Furlong as John Connor. Like and I think a lot of it's the characters, just the way he's written. I think Furlong's performance is good. I don't have an issue with, I don't even have an issue with him. I shouldn't say that. I just don't like the way the character's written. I don't know. Maybe it's a nod to Star Wars because he's kind of got a whiny, like Luke Anakin vibe going. And maybe that was the intent. But I'm just like, the movie's opening up and he's stealing money from the ATM with that PIN decoder. And I'm just like, this little jerk. Like, and he's like, easy money, and I'm just like, man, this, I'm just like, maybe I'd be okay with the T-1000 just ending him right there. The little thief.
He's like, just breaking the law. This, might as well just clean up the trash.
He's got to. I think Cameron did that because he doesn't stay that way in the movie, and it ends up having like a really nice arc because he does go from this real bratty kid doesn't think highly of his mother, stealing money, and he eventually does embrace like the fact that
it's not his mother, Ben.
It's not my mother, Todd. No, I was talking about when he has a low opinion of his mom.
Yeah.
Like he sees his friend sees the photo of her and he's like,
oh, like she's crazy and stuff like that.
Who's that? Yeah. And he's like, oh no, she's not cool, man. She tried to blow up a robotics company.
Yeah. So. Though I find it really interesting kind of psychologically of seeing John Connor of like when he's not with his mother and around like weapons of death and all this different stuff, that he's really kind of, like you said, whiny and complaining and breaking the law but then the moment they get to Mexico and he's around these, I don't know, these rebels or other stuff, and he's around the weapons, he just like gets into his zone of like, this is where I belong. This is how I grew up. This is what, and he kind of calms down and becomes less of this whiny kid and less of this, he feels more at home, I think. And so it's, I don't know if Cameron was trying to go for that, but it's very interesting to see of like the whole like nature nurture kind of situation of like, this is where he was nurtured. This is where he feels far more at home than in the suburbs or whatever of LA, even though he gets to drive down the LA River all the time on a motorbike because there's no,
because that's just what you do.
That's what you do.
Yeah. Right.
Oh,
that scene, that's action sequences still holds up though.
Oh my goodness.
When with him down in there and then T-1000 coming down in that kind of flatter profile, big rig.
Big rig. I always love like how Robert Patrick did it, where like when he chops off the top of it, and then he just kind of pops, like it's just quick, and then he just pops back up, and the way he pushes the window.
There's a music note when he pops up too, like, surprise. Yeah, so I was looking for it. There's only like one or two shots in that sequence, and it's right as Arnold like is making the switch to pull him off the dirt bike and onto his, I think, Harley.
Yeah.
And they used rear projection for it, where they had Arnold on a motorcycle mock-up on a soundstage, and then they had a screen behind him with the big rig scene projected, and it still holds up. Like I could barely even find it. It was done so well. And that was an old Hollywood technique from like the 60s that was never done well because they could never get the brightness and contrast of the projection to match the real person on set. So you could tell that it was a projected image behind them.
Gotcha.
And Cameron figured out the visual to get it dialed in. And so it's flawless. He used it in the first Terminator film when Kyle Reese blows up the fuel truck and Sarah is running away from it. Part of it's set and then part of it's projection screen with yellow gold firelight. Holds up rather well.
It does,
I was like, that still looks pretty good. Like to have her running away from an explosion that's not really there, that's just being projected on a screen. That's a good technique. And they had a little bit of debris come after her too to kind of sell it. But he used it again with the big rig sequence just for a couple shots, just when it's like painfully close, like when the truck is just right on them. He used it, and it's like, until I saw that that's how they did that, I never even thought about it. I was just like, man, how did the stunt drivers just must have been crazy for this?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, apparently even Arnold was crazy during the scene, because when he's on the motorcycle, he's like driving the motorcycle with Eddie Furlong on the back, and he's actually having to like actually, cock the shotgun.
I love the way he does that.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely iconic. And I absolutely love it. But apparently it would pinch his hand or do other things, just like ripping the skin off. But Cameron didn't want him to like look around or scan stuff, so he would just be like, look one direction. So he had to kind of do this whole like keep the motorcycle kind of moving, all this stuff, but then also cock the shotgun and then just point and like shoot like a robot would and stuff like that, like automatically kind of just knowing where to shoot without having to like scan the area. And he just said it was like one of the hardest things he's had to ever do is all of that. But it works. My goodness, I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, and in probably all of Arnolddom. So I love it. Just that, and then when he in Cyberdyne Systems and he just destroys all the cop cars.
Oh yeah. I love the scene where he's shooting SWAT with smoke grenades.
Yeah, he just walks
with tear gas, basically. Yeah, just boop boop. But I have to say that movie has got one of my favorite openings of a movie is probably T2, with him going into the biker bar.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
it just with the readout, and then I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. You forgot to say please.
Mm-hmm. You stand there. It's and Laura and I popped on Terminator 3 just for a hot second, just to be like, okay, whatever. Let's continue this thing on after we had finished Terminator 2, and they do the homage to it, and it's terrible. I'm just like, this is just like, no, like it's not shot for shot, but like it's. You didn't even do the homage.
It's too derivative. It's way too derivative.
It's terrible. So, but there's so much to love about both these movies. And again, I love the genre switch. I love the differences, but yet they still feel very much same universe. Like I don't feel that they're different. Like I feel like they do play well in each other's worlds. I think is the best way to do it.
Yeah. When I'm amazed, some of its budget, the difference is right. 6 million versus I don't know what the budget
that was 102 million for T2
in 91. Man, that's in 91, it's expensive. And it shows that was been one of my big, like, if I could praise James Cameron for one thing more than any other. His words, not mine. He puts every dollar he can up on the screen. Every dollar he can put on screen, he's going to put. And so you get that with T2 as compared to the Terminator, but a lot of its techniques, I'm watching the movies, comparing them, and like even the filming techniques evolved dramatically from 84, really technically probably 83 is when he was shooting, to say 90. That 7-year big leaps in visual effects work, obviously CGI, although it's funny because there's way less CGI in T2 than people think.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the T1000 effects are practical.
Yeah.
Like, and people don't realize that. You've got to go and watch the behind the scenes to realize how much of the liquid metal effects work, especially when he's getting shot, is practical effects, like special squibs and there are
and costume stuff.
Yeah, really advanced costume stuff.
Well, and a lot of it, why he dropped T1000 from the Terminator was because he felt he couldn't do it well, and he didn't think claymation or stop motion was really going to work. But then obviously then you do The Abyss several years later.
That's the technology.
Oh my goodness, now I can do this. And I don't know what it is. It still holds up. Like, well,
it's funny because there's a really cool YouTube channel. I can't remember the name of it. It's a group of visual effects artists. And they do VFX breakdowns on good visual effects and bad, but they tried to recreate with current software the shot where Robert Patrick walks through the jail bars.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And they couldn't get it to look as good.
Really?
And they even admitted it. They're just like, we've tried. This is ours. It looked pretty solid, but like the movie looked better. And they're just like, this is just a credit to the artistry that this wasn't merely guys pushing buttons doing visual effects work in 90 or 91.
It was a lot of thought.
These are serious artists working with very limited software, making sure every frame looked the way it needed to. And yeah, they did them side by side, and the T2 is better.
Yeah.
Like it just is. And yeah, those shots are wild, just wild.
Well, you know what shots are not better in T2? They're about the same. Is the fake Arnold face with the when he like half Terminator, half man kind of thing. It's just terrible. And
is it not in T2?
Yeah, like I don't really like it. And obviously in the Terminator, it's really terrible. Though I will have to say, like watching it this time, I was noticing that it seemed like Arnold had a lot more makeup caked on his face. Like when he's in the cop car driving around, it looks a little more plasticky, which then I think really helps when they do that scene of him, like, cutting out the eye and getting that stuff. But it does look, it's worse than like Total Recall face when he's like pulling out the tracker. It's really bad in the Terminator. And I just remember Terminator 2 was just also like, which I'm trying to remember exactly where it is, but it just doesn't.
I had that costume, by the way, one year for Halloween, the T2 half metal eye. It was terrible because you couldn't see out of it.
Of course not. No.
Just.
Well, it didn't have a readout screen.
You couldn't get it to blend in either, like it, but yeah. By the way, one of the coolest toys I ever had was from Terminator 2.
Oh yeah.
And it was amazing. I'm sure you could probably find this on eBay. It only lasted like 3 or 4 uses though, and then it was done. But it was you had a Terminator figure, just the exoskeleton, and you put it in a mold and you injection filled it with this solution they gave you, and it put a flesh material over the exoskeleton.
That's cool.
And then you could tear away pieces of it. It was almost like a putty kind of solution that it made, but you could tear away pieces to reveal the Terminator underneath. But you only were given enough solution for like 3 or 4 goes, and then you're just like,
you had to buy more.
Super cool. But yeah, I mean, it's just a shame they couldn't keep the quality up for subsequent films. Like,
a couple reasons for that. One, obviously, well, not obviously, but you may not know, but that to get the Terminator film done, he actually had to sell his rights to the Terminator.
Yeah.
And so
isn't he getting them back though?
I think so. I believe, I don't actually know for certain. I know he did. He wrote some of the script for Dark Fate.
Yeah.
The most recent one, but he wasn't happy with it.
I haven't seen it.
Don't see it.
Yeah.
It's not very good. But he was not happy with it, and he kept trying to update it, but they were like, no, just push forward. So he kind of disowns it a little bit. Like that's not really his, even though he goes, this is like truly the third Terminator film. Like all the others are like alternate universe ones. He's like, they're just dumb. So
I think was Genesis the one with Clark from Game of Thrones that played Sarah Connor?
Yes, Emil Clark. Yes.
So Genesis, I actually thought was okay, like compared to some of the other slop.
3 was really rough, especially when
yeah,
Arnold decides to pull off a coffin and then open it up and pull out a minigun. I'm like, what the heck?
I don't like that movie's like all during the day.
Yeah,
like it just felt cheap.
And I will have to say that the most difficult thing too is I feel like I haven't found another Terminator that's as scary as the T-1000. Like they all even though they can do all the different stuff, I'm like interesting. Which is why I was so excited for Terminator Salvation to just be in the future the entire time and not have to deal with it. Like I had such high hopes for that film. And by the way, still one of my favorite trailers of all time. That trailer was absolutely
we were all
stunning.
duped. We were all duped.
All duped.
Yeah.
All duped.
I mean, I didn't hate the movie coming out of it, but I was like, really, this is it?
Yeah.
He's not even the leader of the resistance. Like you've wasted a whole movie. He's not the leader. And you wasted who I thought was perfect casting for it with Bale.
Yeah.
Total travesty. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all I'm going to say about that movie. Yeah.
And you had focused so much time on other people as well. Like the kid,
terrible.
like just
terrible.
Just dumb.
Yeah.
Just dumb. But so fun fact,
mm-hmm.
in my opinion, we almost didn't get Arnold as the Terminator. The studio wanted him as Reese originally. And the story goes basically that Cameron had a lunch with him and he was going to pick a fight with him just so he would not be Reese. Like he was like, I can't work with him. See, he's terrible to work with. Let's get him out. But then Arnold won him over and they were just starting to talk about it. But instead of talking about the character Reese, he started talking about the Terminator and said, this is how your villain should be. This is how he should act. He shouldn't act like a machine. He should be a machine, and like all these kind of different conversations. And after that passion, Cameron was just like, you need to be the Terminator. Like this is what
you're much more passionate about the way that this character's portrayed. Yeah. It made
which then his Arnold's acting agent was like, don't do a villain. No, be the hero. Don't go this path. And Arnold was like, no, I'm going to do this. And guess what? You know who's not in T2? Kyle Reese. Get that agent.
Well, Michael Biehn almost didn't get it either.
No,
he had been prepping for a different role where he had a Southern accent. And so when he came into audition, he was unaware that he was delivering the lines of Kyle Reese in a Southern accent. And the producers are like, we like the performance, but what's up with the accent? He's like, what? And they had to get it clarified with his agent and he came back in and fixed it. And it was fine. But he didn't like the script originally and then actually sat down with Cameron, and Cameron had everything storyboarded out and was real passionate and kind of sold him on that it could be really good. So
that's one of the great things about Cameron. It's just the fact that he gets so passionate about his movies. I mean, looking at it, he has really not done that many movies at all.
No, I mean, that's kind of his operating manual says, it's going to be quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And none of his actual feature films are under a 7.5 or something like that on IMDb. Yeah. All of his stuff. Yeah. I mean, he's got a couple of documentaries that are lower and stuff, but I don't quantify those. I think the actual feature film fiction stuff. But I mean, he really doesn't have that much, and it's all quality. Just impressive as a director to be able to pick this many films or create.
He's pretty challenging to work for, though. I mean,
absolutely.
He's exceedingly demanding, although I think he's mellowed out quite a bit, especially following The Abyss, which we will do an episode on The Abyss, I think, probably next year. Well, so I think it's worth diving into.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, really good film. But you're right. He pretty much hits it out of the park, both critically and the box office. Like,
loves them. I mean, T2 did $500 million worldwide
for a very hard R-rated action film. Like,
and then Terminator did almost $80 million worldwide on a $6.5 million budget. I mean, you succeeded going over 10 times your budget. Like, no wonder they're giving this guy money to do things. So it's just fantastic. It's just impressive. I mean, the Terminator still holds up to me as being a very scary film. Terminator 2 still holds up as being such a great action sci-fi story, where I still I love the ending of it too. I love the ending of both films. I think it's great, but I love the ending of Terminator 2 is just one of my favorites of just the driving at night and the narration over top. No characters, just that, like, our fate is our own. And I think it's just brilliant. And then you hear the Terminator. I mean, the soundtrack in this is stunning.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, to have that, like, you just know it immediately when that bum, it just comes on. You're just like, oh, that's Terminator. It's fantastic. Like, let's just do it. And of course, Cameron likes to push the boundaries of what he can get away with. Because I'm going to tell you right now, that helicopter stunt in T2 where flies under the bridge is mind blowing. The fact he gets any helicopter pilot to do that is beyond me as well. That the pilot must have been absolutely crazy to fly that close to the deck and fly under a bridge that short.
In the beginning of the movie, you've got the big rig sequence, and you're like, oh, that's an incredible action sequence. And Cameron's like, hold my beer. Because like the helicopter with basically like a box van kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's all in camera, folks. Like,
none of that CGI.
No. And it's like Cameron's just so discerning. Like, he'll only do CGI if he absolutely has to.
Yeah.
And then once he does, it has to look perfect. Like, the guy's just so demanding with his visual effects artist. And I think we've discussed that. I think that's the difference sometimes with movies with good VFX and not as great. I think it's who's in the captain's chair, if you will, and how demanding are they, and what kind of an eye do they have, and what are they willing to like put up with and sacrifice to make it work. Mm-hmm. But man, I think the big difference for me between the two movies visually is the future war stuff is just so much better in T2. Like, he's really limited by budget in the first Terminator. With the scale, the model work's just not as good. Like, I could really tell, like, that was pretty glaring that those were like, they were models and they weren't particularly great models.
No. And
then he was having to use like a lot of projection effects, and whereas the sequel, there's way more like high-end composite work, and then the future war sets are just so much more grandiose. I mean, I remember watching the behind the scenes stuff. Like, it's like 3 or 4 city blocks that they built.
Yeah, they built. Though you do get a lot more future in the Terminator than you do really in T2, because outside of the opening sequence, there's not a whole lot that you get. And I kind of like some of those. This is how a daily life kind of looks like, or, I mean, and obviously we get that wonderful, lovely Franco kind of cameo.
Oh, he's awesome, dude. As the infiltrator.
Yeah. As like, comes
I
in.
forget
like
what model he's supposed to be, but it's like, he's just,
he's not 101, because obviously 101 was Arnold's frame. But
that sequence is really good though. Even before that's a really good sequence, because you get Kyle Reese's like just the depravity of the situation of like living in squalor and everybody's starving, and it's bleak.
Sick and everything. Yeah.
I
mean, it just really good. Like, I think even though it's not done nearly as well, I do really enjoy seeing all that kind of future stuff.
Oh yeah.
In the Terminator, and we don't get Franco in T2, so sad day there.
Didn't cameo that one.
Not that I'm aware of. I didn't see. But who did cameo? Our good friend Dean Norris from Breaking Bad and Total Recall. He was the SWAT team lead.
Is he really?
He was, yeah.
That's
Because I'm
funny.
sitting there because he was talking and he's talking. I was like, "No, that's not Dean Norris." And so I quickly looked it up. Yep, it's Dean Norris as the SWAT team leader. So I'm like, this is now 2 Arnold films that he's been in as small bit roles.
Well, I know I always liked seeing Jeanette Goldstein as Janelle, because she plays Vasquez in Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
The first Terminator, you've got Lance, was it Henriksen that plays the second in the cop, and then he's obviously in Aliens as well. So Cameron will bring you back around. I think if he likes working with you, he'll might not be a huge role, but he'll find a spot for you in his movie.
Yeah. Well, and going back, and I love in the original Terminator, I love all of the ways they explain away of what Sarah Connor is seeing with the Terminator, of like, here's the flak vest. He's hyped up on PCP. He is all this different stuff. And you're just like, well, actually that sounds legitimate. Like to normal human beings, that should, that's probably actually what it is, and then he comes in and of course decimates the police station.
That sequence is incredible.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I mean, it's maybe 5 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes, I think, which is pretty long for a shootout. Like it lasts a while, but it's it's terrible because the cops are such doofuses and have like just no shred of even
any type of actual like strategy or tactics.
Yeah. And like, it's one thing to not believe that this is a machine from the future coming to kill her, but like, they don't even think of him as some really super high trained, like, ex special forces. Like they don't do anything. He's just like, oh, there's like 52 cops in this building. You're fine. Go to sleep. Yeah. Go to sleep, Sarah. And it's like, by that point, you're freaking rooting for Arnold to just lay waste to this place. And he does, and he looks cool doing it. And I love the touch of like, by that point, he's got the shades on and you can see the red behind the shades occasionally. Yeah. Just super, super nice touch. But yeah,
and of course you get the iconic line of, I'll be back.
I'll be back. Yep.
Yeah. And I do like the juxtaposition between the two movies of Reese being the one to say, come with me if you want to live. And then the call back to it. But this time it is Arnold saying it. Like that's the kind of fan service that feels good and right, cause obviously
it's rooted in story.
It's rooted in story because obviously, John Connor was the one who kind of probably trained the T-800 in Terminator 2 and sent back. And so probably had like, hey, this is what Reese said to my mother. Cause his mother probably said, told him all the stories and stuff like that. Say this line, this is what she's going to know. And then of course he, depending on the time paradox situation, he grew up hearing that from the T-800 as well. So, because obviously the T-800 says, come with me, you want to live. Yeah. So that gets into the interesting dynamic of time as a construct.
These movies follow the laws of time travel about as well as Back to the Future, which is not at all. Make it up as we go along. Choose your own adventure, which is fine. I don't get caught up in the minutia on that. I always figured that we were dealing with not unlike Back to the Future 2, where they're on an alternate timeline. That's what these movies always felt like to me, that in the original timeline, Kyle Reese was not John Connor's father, but in any subsequent timeline, he is. In the same way, in the original timeline, John Connor was not raised by a T-8, had no interaction with the T-800. Subsequent ones he does, which gets even more convoluted because it's like, if the future's not fixed, then whose future are we saving?
And then also, what happens if we change the future? Does Kyle Reese then, like, he no longer comes back? So then does John Connor like disappear Back to the Future wise from like a picture? Like there's so many.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Let's just move on. But
this is there's Reddit boards full of this.
Yeah,
like,
this conversation.
These movies make no sense. Well,
yeah, let's be honest. Most time travel movies really don't make any sense whatsoever.
If they did, we wouldn't want to watch them. So
yeah. Gotta fight this stuff. Oh, I love these movies. I love
these two.
These two. Yeah, just these two. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I feel like there could have been so many more that were done so well. Like, Cameron could have really made it such a huge franchise and really built it. I mean, and obviously it's still, most of the movies did really, really well, in the box office.
I will say, and I'm sure people disagree with me, but the only other thing that's got Terminator attached to it, besides these two movies that I watched pretty faithfully and enjoyed, was the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Mm-hmm. That was it. Like,
yeah.
And it's really ironic that a TV show
captured it. Yeah. That show with Lena Headey as Sarah Connor was really quite good. The girl who
really quite good. Yeah.
Played River from
Summer Glau
from Firefly.
She
was in it.
Yeah, she's a Terminator.
Yeah.
Like a good one. No, it was a good show. It didn't.
I think, was it only a season or two?
I think it was one season. Yeah. Or no, two. Yeah, 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. And it was good. It's just, it was on Fox, which.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's who
but it's set
destroyed
after
Firefly as well.
It's set after T2. Like, it's a direct follow-up to T2. It's in the intervening years before the war.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the budget, though. I mean, like, they got into some effects that were pretty, like, rough.
Yeah.
Some CGI. So I don't know what the future holds with the franchise. I feel like a long time's got to, like, kind of just elapse with nothing being made, and then it'll get in the right hands. I don't think Cameron's going to be around to mess with it, because
he's got 17 avatars that he's going to be making.
Yep.
So.
But he'll probably, he's even joked that he's probably going to end up passing away in the middle of one of them just because they take so long to make. But hopefully that didn't happen. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, he'll probably get. So we've done Earth, we've done water. So he's got to do air and the fire ones, and then he's got to do the heart version, and then we've got the whole Captain Planets of avatars. So,
I just hope, hopefully Don Cheadle as Captain Planet shows up for, so just turns everybody into trees.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, what else to say about these movies, buddy? Anything?
As far as sci-fi goes,
this is up there. Yeah.
Yeah. They're especially T2.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as a second entry film, you mean you're talking about right in line with The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Any of your handful of really awesome second entries,
which are so few.
There aren't that many. No, it's not a long list, but
and especially ones that are regarded as far superior to, not maybe far superior is wrong, but like better than the original. Like most people I think would say that T2 is the better film over the Terminator.
Oh, I don't even think that's worth debating. We usually get into the favorite, preference versus better, but I think even objectively speaking, based on how you would grade out a movie, objectively Terminator 2 is the better film. Like, and it's not particularly close.
No.
So
no. I just know like there's a lot of people who do still enjoy the Terminator. I think because of the more horror slasher.
That becomes a genre preference. Yes. Yeah. And I can see that. But I will say on a rewatch of the Terminator, before the third act, it slows down like big time. There was like a good 20 minutes. It was just Reese and Sarah talking.
Yeah.
Like under the bridge, then into the hotel unit. And it slows down big time. Like there's nothing going on. Fortunately, the third act third act action sequence in the first one's pretty awesome. But compared to the second one, it's just like
the second one,
because the stop motion really dates that movie for me with the Terminator and once his flesh is burned off.
I do love they did do a callback of the Terminator, like after his like legs are blown off or whatever, how it's crawling after Sarah Connor, and then they have Arnold doing that when he's about to be stabbed. Like it feels nice. Like again, these are like little small moments that have just like, it's not much like fan service, not in your face, but just like if you pick it up, great. If you don't, you don't need to. You don't need it. I'm gonna
that final act in T2 is just
it's just
exquisite. Yeah, right down to the
thumbs up
to the very end. Him putting his giving him the thumbs up. Yeah,
just hits me every time.
You're just crying right in your beer.
Yeah, right in my beer. Just oh my goodness, they loved each other. They did. He taught
as much as a young boy and a machine can love each other.
They taught each other things. They learned from each other.
Yeah, have you seen the meme video or whatever where it's if John was teaching him slang today?
No, I have not seen.
You'll have to look that. It's like it's not everything gets replaced. It's not no problemo, and it's like that's sus, and it's all the current lingo. It's really good. It's really good.
Oh my goodness.
And that's the stuff why I still tolerate the internet, is for that. Stuff like that occasionally shows up. So
yeah.
By the way, I didn't find the Arnold Titanic deep fake that I thought I would find, but I did find one. Unfortunately, it was Arnold as Kate Winslet telling Leo he wanted him to draw her. And he was like, "Come on, Leo, draw me. Use my boobies." Yeah, it was it's well worth it. I forget who the comedian is that does those, that deep fakes Arnold into other movies and then does voice work that's really, really good.
Much better than ours. Much better.
Oh yeah, no, it's much, much better. You got any?
Nothing. I feel like I could talk more about this stuff, but we would just go round and round the kind of the same kind of things. I love these movies. They have a special place in my heart for Arnold films, both of them. And I'm glad we got to rewatch them.
Yeah, they're both distinctly Terminator, but they stand relatively well on their own, as well as in just very different films that still feel part of a cohesive whole.
Mm-hmm. Same universe.
And props to Arnold for looking as good as he does in T2, well into his early 40s. I do notice that Cameron, the way Cameron films him, some of the angles he just shot selection he chooses to film Arnold in T2 is very reflective of his elevated status as arguably the biggest movie star in the world at the time, compared to the way he films him in
the first movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's not even just that he's the villain in the first film and kind of the hero / anti-hero in the second one. It's like he does a much better job of making Arnold just look good in T2. And he's not really as concerned with that in the first film. So it's interesting to watch with him on the bike, especially. Like, he just maximizes the cool factor for Arnold in that second entry.
I mean, you give him a Harley in the second one as opposed to
whatever that was. I don't even know what that was. Yeah.
I mean, you put him in biker gear as opposed to like ruffian gear, punk stuff from when he decides to beat up all those punks. And
mainly just wanted to beat up Bill Paxton.
Of course. I mean, why not? You're gonna beat him up in another movie later. Might as well just continue the trend. Let's be honest. And again, Bill Paxton, we already talked about him in True Lies, pulls off that sleazeball like teenager punk kid so well.
Yep.
My goodness. Like just the whole like smashing the beer on the thing at the beginning, just like, oh, you such a jerk. Oh,
Yeah.
really dislike you. Like, I'm glad you all got beat up.
Oh,
So-
well, the one guy.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, the one guy got his heart ripped out.
Yeah.
And that's a part they edited for cable.
I'm sure.
Went full Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom on that guy.
Kalima!
Took-de-day!
That'd be a
Well,
weird
on that
crossover. On that note. Oh, my goodness.
Well, we appreciate everybody listening this week for our final little mini season of Schwarzenegger. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. And this will absolutely not be the last Schwarzenegger films we elect to do on the podcast. Far from it. But this was kind of what we feel like was the upper tier.
And what we needed to talk about.
Yeah. Of movies. And so we had to recap kind of where we had some of these fall. Alec, you had Terminator 2 as your number one favorite Arnold film. It's my number 2 behind Predator. And we just flip-flop those because you have Predator at 2. You actually had Conan the Barbarian at 3. I have Total Recall. But more or less our top 5 movies are basically the same. So yeah, we had fun doing this. We'll have some more Arnold stuff down the line probably next year. We won't necessarily do another mini season, but we'll work them in as we feel like. And Arnold's one of one, man. You just never see another star like him. Like they made him and then just threw the mold away. Like the whole story from rags to riches from Austria, just told no at every turn. Like, can't do this. You'll never be a big movie. You'll never be a movie star. You'll never be an actor. Does it at the highest level. Yeah. We love him for it.
We do. Well, my favorite was I got to go see him do the USC like commencement speech or whatever. And he just like, I'm sure it's a speech that he's done multiple times, but he just talks about like his success. And he talks about his journey, and he took acting classes and he took voice classes. And of course, he looks at the audience. He goes, like, look at you, Arnold. They were worthless. You can't talk English anymore. Like, what are you doing? Like this, we can't understand you. But it makes sense. He just overcame everything just to be, I don't know, as close as you could get to American royalty as there is,
Yeah. Yeah. What does he say? He was born in Austria, but he was made in America.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. All right, man. Well, we'll wrap this up, and we will be back as always, typically next week with another movie or a streaming show to discuss, to be determined. But we've had a lot of fun doing this one, and kudos to Schwarzenegger and his incredible filmography that we get to watch and discuss. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.